A lot of times, some of my best worship experience has been sitting in that deer stand. Has been getting there, when it's freezing cold and everybody's like, you're crazy, why are you going outside when it's 20 degrees? I can put clothes on. I can sit in that stand and I can get there before anybody. I told Stevie a couple weeks ago, I said, I must be crazy because I sat for 2 hours and I didn't see the first bird because I was the only crazy one that decided to get up that morning. But guess what? Come 8:30, the sun popped out, the birds started moving, and I got to see the whole earth wake up in front of me. For me, that's worship. For me, that's getting to say, God, I get to see all of this. I get to see your glory and your majesty by the things that you've made, by the things that I can actually physically see while the sun comes up and the birds come out and you feeding them and providing for them and knowing that you do the same for me. That's a worship experience for me. For some of y'all, it may be that first duck that flies over in the morning. For some of y'all, it may be, that first cup of coffee when you're sitting there in the morning in the living room, that first cup of coffee. We all worship in different ways, but it's not about how we worship. It's not about when we worship. It's about who we are worshiping.
So when we sing, we find strength to face the day. In your presence, all our fears are washed away. Washed away. Hosanna, Hosanna. You are the God who saves us, worthy of all our praises.
Welcome to Westside Emmanuel Baptist Church, the church that loves God and loves people. We're in the heart of Bogalusa with Bogalusa on our heart. We look forward to you joining us in person sometime soon as we worship the Lord together.
I give you my life, I give you my trust, Jesus. I lay down my life, I take up my cross, Jesus. For you are my God, whatever the cost, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. Oh, to Jesus I surrender all. To you I freely give. Oh, I will ever love and trust you. In your presence I will live.
So this morning, the service is going to look a little different, but hopefully it's because we can actually put it into practice this morning. So for the next 3 weeks, we'll be talking about some other things about what the church is built on, but this morning we want to talk about worship. And the thing about worship is out of these 5 purposes of the church, out of fellowship, discipleship, ministry, and evangelism, worship is right in the middle of all of it. So no matter whether you're fellowshipping, or you're ministering to someone, or you're evangelizing to someone, or you're in a discipleship, in anything, in any aspect of what our church is built on, worship should be involved in every bit of it. Whether it's the singing, or the preaching, or Sunday school, or when you're helping with the youth, or with the kids, or you're just talking to somebody about church in general. In everything we do, worship should be at the center of that, and we should be bringing God glory by worshiping Him and praising Him through it. This morning, if you'll turn in your Bibles to Psalms 100. As you're turning there, if you will, stand with me this morning as we read God's Word. Psalms 100 says, "Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before Him with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is God. It is He who made us, and we are His. We are His people, the sheep of His pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name, for the Lord is good and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. Lord, I just thank you this morning, Lord. I just praise you, Lord, and I pray that this morning that I'll be nothing more than just a mouth up here, that you will speak through me, and this morning we can see and learn what truly worshiping you is, and getting out of the way and just focusing on nothing but you. In your son's name, amen. So what is worship? Let's just look up in the dictionary and see what the meaning of worship actually is. The noun worship means the feeling or expression of reverence and adoration for a deity. The worship of God. That would be the noun of worship. Now, worship is not a noun. Worship is a verb. It's something that we do. So when we look at that, here's what it looks like. It says, show reverence and adoration for a deity, honor with religious rites. So that's still a little vague of what we're doing. The synonyms for worship really put it in perspective, okay? Here's what it says. It says, paying homage to, honor, adore, praise, pray to, glorify, exalt, hold dear, cherish, treasure, esteem, idolize, overpraise, not just praise, overpraise, to follow, to look up to, or the informal synonym means to put on a pedestal. And I think that kind of really sums up worship, because what we don't want to be the people that Jesus talked about in Matthew 15, 8, and 9. It says, these people honor me with their lips, but their heart is far, far away from me, and they worship me in vain. We don't want to be those kind of people that we come in here and we sing songs on Sunday morning, and it's nothing but just words coming out of our mouth. We don't want to be those people. We don't want to be the ones that are out on the street that one second you're bashing everyone and the next second you're trying to witness to someone and bring them to Christ. I talked to a guy at work this past week, and he was talking about a guy that used to work with him. He said, the guy carried a Bible around in his back pocket, and one day he'd come in and it was Jesus this, Jesus that, and let me pray for you. What's wrong with me? What's going on? Let me pray for you. And then the next day he came in and it was cuss word after cuss word after cuss word. Let's change the radio station and listen to something else. And he was like, I just couldn't understand what was going on there, because all that guy was lip service. Those days was lip service, and the rest of the time was who he really was. We don't want to be people that worship God out of our mouth and that alone. It needs to come from our heart. True worship comes from in here. And that's what we're going to look at this morning, is how. Does worship really matter? Does worship really matter to you? Does it matter to God? For us though, a lot of times the problem with our worship is we let all of our distractions get in our way. We let everything that's going on around us throughout the bad things that are happening through our work week, through, whether you got an argument this morning with your wife or kids about what they were wearing. We let all that stuff just fill our head, and we come in here on Sunday morning and we say, God, just give me something. Give me, God. Give me. Give. Give me something this morning, God, because I just need you to give me something. And that's not what worship is about. Worship is our time that we give back to God. It's our time that we say, God, I'm putting everything aside. Sometimes I go to church and I don't feel anything. Sometimes I listen to songs and I don't really like them and I don't get anything from the song. Sometimes I listen to sermons and the pastor really didn't speak to me this morning. Sometimes we get in a place where we're helping with children and youth and we're teaching Sunday school and we just aren't getting anything out of it. We feel like, God, why am I not getting anything? Well, it's because you're not putting into it. Because worship is not about you getting something, it's about you giving Him something. Amen. It's about you giving Him praise, and you giving Him honor, and you giving Him glory for what He has done for you. That's what worship is. It's not a time that you just sit back and you go, I feel so good, I'm going to raise my hand. No, you're raising your hands because you are bowing down to the King of Kings. You are standing at His throne, at His foot, and you're saying, God, I'm giving everything back to you. I don't want anything. I'm giving it all to you. That's what worship is. That's what worship looks like. Worship is not just something you do every once in a while. It's a lifestyle. Worship is anytime and every time. It doesn't matter what place you're in. It doesn't matter what time it is. It doesn't even matter what football game is on. It's worshiping God. It's praising Him through everything we do. You know, it's whether you're at work or you're on a ball field or you're in the duck blind or a tree stand or on your front porch or sitting in a pew. It's worshiping God and realizing that it doesn't matter who you are, it only matters who you're worshiping. See, for me, a lot of times, some of my best worship experience has been sitting in that deer stand. Has been getting there, you know, when it's freezing cold and everybody's like, you're crazy, why aren't you going outside when it's 20 degrees? I can put clothes on. I can sit in that stand and I can get there before anybody. I told Stevie a couple weeks ago, I said, I must be crazy because I sat for 2 hours and I didn't see the first bird because I was the only crazy one that decided to get up that morning. But guess what? Come 8:30, the sun popped out, the birds started moving, and I got to see the whole earth wake up in front of me. For me, that's worship. For me, that's getting to say, God, you know, I get to see all of this. I get to see your glory and your majesty by the things that you've made, by the things that I can actually physically see while the sun comes up and the birds come out and you feeding them and providing for them and knowing that you do the same for me. That's a worship experience for me. For some of y'all, it may be that first duck that flies over in the morning. For some of y'all, it may be, you know, that first cup of coffee when you're sitting there in your morning in the living room, you know, that first cup of coffee. We all worship in different ways, but it's not about how we worship. It's not about when we worship. It's about who we are worshiping. That's where the big difference is. See, if you look back through history, you've got all these different cultures that have idols for everything. The Greeks and the Romans, they had idols for everything. You know, they had one for the sun, they had one for the trees, one for the cows, one for the horses, one's for this, one's for that. They even had one sitting over in the corner that said for the unknown God. See, the problem was they were worshiping everything that God made instead of worshiping the one that made it all. See, and we don't have to do that. Instead of worshiping, you know, our phones or our TV or our kids or whatever it may be that you put before God every day, instead of worshiping those things, we ought to be focusing on God and worshiping Him and saying, God, you know, thank you for this. Thank you for my kids. Thank you for my job. Thank you for my house. Thank you for the things that I have. Thank you, the one who made all creation. Thank you for those things. Amen. And let me give back to you by thanking you, by not just moving my lips, but actually sitting and beginning to praise and worship who you are. And then on Sundays, for one time during the week, I'll give you an hour of my time where I'll sit and I'll focus totally on nothing else. Because during this time, during this hour on Sunday mornings, you don't have to think about anything else. You don't have to worry about your job. You don't have to worry about your kids. You don't have to worry about, you know, what's going on at the house. You don't have to worry about those things. For this time right here, our sole focus should be on nothing but Him. And that's where we fail a lot of times. And that's what we want to get through today. And hopefully by the end of this, we realize that there's a few things we need to do before we come into a time of worship that gets our focus on Him. So I've got 6 things. I'm going to go through 3 of them now, and then we're going to have a time that we actually can put this into practice, and then we'll finish up with a little short sermon at the end. It won't take long at all, I promise. So don't worry when you see that 2 sermons there in the bulletin. So first of all, 3 things real quick. Surrender of our lives. Romans 12:1 says, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in the view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. So if we're going to offer ourselves and we're going to surrender our lives and we're going to offer ourselves up to God as a living sacrifice, that means it's something that we're doing every day. It doesn't say dead sacrifices. It doesn't say, you know, I want you to give dead sacrifices so that it just is there and dead and I can see it, but that's it. No, He wants us to be a living sacrifice where we are sacrificing things in ourselves, sacrificing things that we have to do every day for His glory and His praise. He wants us to live a holy and pleasing life. That's holy and pleasing God. So that means when we come into a time of worship, we've got to get ourselves right before God. You can't come in here and expect to worship God and expect to give back to Him when there's a barrier that's broken between you and Him. If you have a friend and y'all get in an argument, if me and Heath get in an argument, before me and him can go hang out, before we can go hunting or we can go shoot guns or whatever it is we're going to do that weekend, Before we can do that, if me and him are upset with each other and there's something conflict in between us, we've got to get that right. Y'all agree? Yeah. I mean, most time, husbands, wives, you say you don't go to bed at night, upset with each other because you try to resolve the conflict. You just try to, whatever that strife and envy and argument was that you had 2 hours before, you get rid of that before you go to bed, and then you lay down beside each other and go to sleep at night. You don't go to bed upset. You can't come in God's house upset. You can't come in and expect to give him anything if there's sin in your life and there's something that's breaking the barrier between you and his throne. You cannot enter God's throne room. You cannot enter his presence if there is sin in your life. So before you can come in here, before you can have a true worship experience, you've got to surrender your life. You've got to be holy and pleasing to him so that we can have this true and proper worship. That means you lay it all down. You say, God, this week hasn't been great. I've done things that I'm not real happy about. I got in an argument 2 hours ago with my wife before church. My kids, I said something to them that I shouldn't have said. I've got things from this past week that you and me haven't worked out yet. And before I can go in here and give you all the honor and praise and thank you for what you've done in my life, I've got to get rid of all that. I've got to focus my heart on you and quit focusing and letting that barrier break our relationship. Second thing, taking the focus off of us and putting it on him. For worship, it's not about us. When you come to church on Sunday morning, I hope by the end of it that you get something out of it, but that's not what you're here for. You're not here to get a feel-good message. You're not here to sing some songs and just say, yeah, man, the song service was real good this morning. It really made me smile. That's not what you're here for. That's not what church is about. Church is about taking the focus off of you, taking the focus off of me, and putting the focus on him. That's what our praise and our worship is. It's not about, God, I want to hear some good songs this morning. I want to see the lights going crazy. I want Marcus to stand up here in front of us and jump and hoot and holler. And by the end of it, I want to be just real happy and feel good. It's not what it's about. Church and worship and this time that we have, that we set apart every week, is a time that we take our focus off of us and we focus on nothing but him. And that's in anything that we do, whether it's work or at home or wherever it may be. The focus isn't supposed to be about you. It's supposed to be about him.
That's right.
Third, get out of the way. Move. We've got to figure out that our opinions and our questions and ourselves have to move and have to be removed and let go of all that stuff from the past week and move it out of the way, get over whatever it is that's hanging us up at the moment. Say, okay, God, it's me and you. I don't care what the preacher's wearing. I don't care what songs we sing this morning. I don't care about what's happening with the kids that's sitting in front of me, if they're screaming and hollering or what's going on, God. It's not about them. It's not about me. I'm going to let everything I have move out of the way so that it's just you. See, in these three things right here, and this is where we're going to kind of stop for just a few minutes. These three things right here is what starts worship. If we move out of the way, we take the focus off of us, and we take all the sacrifice that we have, and we're a living sacrifice for him. And we get all this stuff out of our heads, and we quit focusing on, what's for lunch, or what we have to do this afternoon, or what time the ball game comes on, or what it may be, or what's going on next week. And we take all of that, and we get it out of our head. And we say, okay, God, it's about you. It's about you and me, and about me giving back to you, and letting me express my praise and my glory and your glory, and let me express all of that to you through me worshiping you. No, if that means that you raise your hands, and raise your hands. If that means you want to dance a little, that means you dance a little. If that means you just want to close your eyes and just listen to the music, then that's fine too. But what you can't do is you can't come into it with stuff on your heart. So what we're going to do this morning, Waylon's going to come up and sing a song. It's a new song that a lot of folks probably don't know. Some of us may know. But what I want you to do is we're opening this altar up this morning. Every time the Israelites, every time something in the Bible happened, and there was a great movement or a great moment, they built an altar. They left it there for a remembrance. They didn't build it and then tear it back down. They put it there and it stayed there. And it was a time that they worshiped God. The first time worship is actually mentioned in the Bible is when Abraham took Isaac up on the mountain. And he was taking Isaac up on the mountain to sacrifice his son. But before they did, he said, let's worship. Abraham, knowing what God asked of him, worshiped God. Abraham, knowing what was about to happen, worshiped God. He said, God, I got to get everything I've got out of my way. I've got to quit focusing on my son, and I've got to focus on you. So this morning, during this time, that's what this is about. Something that we should do every Sunday. The altar's open. If there's something that you need to lay down before Him, if there's something you just need to sit in your seat, you can pray right there. But if there's something you need to get off your chest that's got a barrier between you and God this morning, that's got your focus elsewhere, not on Him and about Him, then do that now. Take this time and say, God, you know, those first two songs, I listened to them and they were good, but I wasn't thinking about you. But now I do. God, I want to open my heart to you. I want to give you praise. I want to worship you for who you are this morning and for all the things you've done. And I don't care who sees me. I don't care who's around me. I don't care who's sitting next to me. This is between me and you this morning, God. So take this time.
Father, I hear that you are drawing a line in the sand, and I want to be standing on your side, holding your hand. So let your kingdom come, let it live in me. This is my prayer, this is my plea. Father, I see that you are drawing a line in the sand, and I want to be standing on your side, holding your hand. So let your kingdom come, let it live in me. This is my prayer, this is my plea. Let the worshipers arise. Let the sons and the daughters sing. I'm surrendering my all. I surrender to the King.
And I looked and I heard the voice of many angels around the throne of living creatures and the elders, and their numbers was 10,000 times 10,000 and 1,000 times 1,000, saying with a loud voice, worthy is the Lamb who was slaughtered to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and praise. And I heard every creature that is in heaven and on earth and under the earth and in the sea and everything in them saying, to the one who is seated on the throne and to the Lamb be praise and honor and glory and power forever and ever. And the four living creatures were saying, Amen. And the elders fell down and worshiped. Stand with us this morning. Worship with us this morning. Cry out to God. Shout to Him as we open this time for worship.
Say Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Holy, holy is He. Sing a new song to Him who sits on heaven's mercy seat. Sing that again. I know you know it. Sing it loud. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Holy, holy is He. Sing a new song. Sing a new song to Him who sits on heaven's mercy seat. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. With all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you. Clothed in rainbows, where you are, and where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Yes, where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you.
As y'all are seated, if the little ones want to meet this Lord over here by the piano, they can be dismissed for children's church. I know they won't be in there very long, but they've got some fun stuff for y'all to do. So as we finish up this morning, we sing a song about how we need Him. Through everything we need Him. Every hour we need Him. It's real easy, number 4, it's real easy when we have to sacrifice our own things. When we have personal sacrifice, it involves worship. See, sometimes it's real easy, when something goes good, when you get that promotion at work, or you get a new job, or a new truck, or you just got a new house, or new baby on the way, it's real easy to look at ourselves and be like, man, look what I've done. Look at all the things that I've accomplished. Look at this promotion I just got. I'm not, the Indian no more. I get to be a chief now. It's real easy to focus back on ourselves and just worship ourselves. Worship the things that are around us. It's real easy to do that. But worship involves personal sacrifice. Of saying, you know what, God, I don't want to focus on my accomplishments, because my accomplishments are nothing without you. The things that I have in life are nothing without you. Everything that I have is because you have given it to me. And I don't want to focus on the things that I have and the things that I've done. I want to put my focus on you. And in doing that, I want to focus on Jesus. Hebrews 13:15 says, through Jesus, therefore, let us continually offer to God a sacrifice of praise, the fruit of lips that openly profess His name. Through Jesus Christ and what He did on the cross and what He did for us gives us something to praise God and thank Him about every single day. It takes everything that we have, it takes a focus on us, it takes us getting out of the way, and everything that we've put in front of Him. When we focus on the cross and we focus on Him, it puts Him at our lips so that we can profess His name and praise Him continually. See, there's nothing that we can do to get ourselves, to work ourselves, to make a way for ourselves to get to God. Jesus has already done every bit of it. He bridged the gap. He's the one that stands there in the middle and says, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. No one comes to my Father except through me. And for that, that's why we worship Him. That's why we fall down at His feet. That's why one day every tongue will confess that He is Lord. It doesn't matter if they believed in Him before or not. One day they will all bow at His feet and say, you are Lord of all. So they might as well get ready and be prepared for it and learn how to do it here on earth. Because it'd be real terrible to get to heaven and have to start learning how to praise and worship God. But you don't have to do that. Through everything we do, we can continually praise Him. And through everything we do, we can openly and profess who He is. Because we don't have to be scared of what anybody on this earth says about us. We don't have to be worried about what organization is out to get us and what they're trying to take off of cop cars and what they're trying to take off of media and what they're trying to take away from us and try to get it off of our dollar bills. It doesn't matter if our dollar bill says in God we trust, because it doesn't matter what that dollar bill says, because in God I trust. See, it doesn't matter what we do. We should be able to openly and profess who God is through worship and praise everywhere and anything at any time. So if that means we need to start changing our radio station, we need to change the radio station. That means we need to start watching something different on TV with our kids, we need to start watching something different on TV with our kids. If that means we need to stop going and doing the things that we used to do so that we can focus and put our focus on Him and get all the other distractions out of our head, then that's what we need to do. Sometimes it requires personal sacrifice for us to worship God and stay in a worshipful state of mind. It means that we have to get rid of the things that distract us from Him, out of the way, move it out of the way, get it out, take those things and say, I can't do that anymore because it breaks my barrier between me and God. It puts a wall up between me and God, so I can't do that anymore. I'm not listening to that filth anymore because it comes into my head, it comes into my heart, and the next thing you know, it's coming out of my mouth. I'm not going to let the things that I used to do be in my child's head because I don't want my child to grow up the way I did and think the way I did, because now I think a different way. And I'm on a worshipful mindset and I stay focused on God because all that other stuff is out of my head. See, when we do what you did just a while ago, when we come into that state of mind and we focus on God and say, God, I don't want just an hour on Sundays to be focused on you. I want every moment, every hour of my life to be focused on you, and I want to push everything away, then it puts us in a worship state of mind all the time. So that in anything we're doing, we're praising God, because it's not about us, it's about Him. It's not focused on how fast I can run, how good I can sing, on how far I can hit a ball, how good I can shoot these things, or whatever it may be. It's not about what I can do, it's about what He can do through me. See, when we get in that mindset and we say, no, God, it's not about me. I'll sacrifice anything that I have to get me out of the way so that people can see you. That's when you're worshiping. That's when you're openly confessing and professing who God is in your life each and every day. But sometimes it's not all peaches and cream. Sometimes things happen in life and there's loss and there's pain and there's hurt. Sometimes when all is lost, the only thing we can do is fall down and worship. And you're probably thinking in your head, that's crazy. The last thing I want to think about is worshiping and being praising and praising God when everything is falling apart right from under me. When David faced loss and pain, he had a child that died. There's some of you in here that may have lost a child, all of us have lost someone in our life that was dear to us. And in those times of heartache, whether it's the loss of a loved one, or if your house just got flooded, or a hurricane came through and blew everything away, or what it may be, just lost a job. In those times of heartache is when we should draw closer to God and worship Him for what He has done. See, David had lost a child, and he prayed, but the baby died anyways. You know, me, myself, I can't imagine what it is to lose a living child. I know what it is to feel like to lose one that you never laid your hands on. And as hard as that felt, I can't imagine what it is to actually have one in your arms and be able to look at it and then it not be there anymore. But as terrible as that is, this is what David did. It says, then David got up from the ground after he had washed, put on lotions, and changed his clothes. He went into the house of the Lord and worshipped. So in a moment of loss and heartache, David picked himself up, washed off, set everything aside, and focused on God. See, at that point, when we do that, we're no longer moving away from God and running from Him, but we're running towards Him. And we're praising Him and worshiping Him for who He is and what He's done. Bad things happen. Bad things are going to happen. They're going to continue to happen until He comes back. And they're going to get worse and worse. And we're going to have to learn to deal with it. But what makes it a lot easier to deal with is when you're in the midst and heartache, that you can take and say, God, I don't want to focus on me, and I don't want to focus on what's going on here. I want to focus on you and what you do. I want to focus on you, and I want to praise and worship you through this heartache. And through this, see what your plan is. Through me losing this child, through me losing a grandfather, a grandmother, or a spouse, what your plan is for my life. Through me losing this job, what door you may open next. See, we always want to look at what's bad and what's gone. But we don't ever want to look at what's ahead. But through worshiping, through praising God, and taking the focus off of us, and putting all that stuff behind us, and sacrificing ourselves and our personal things that we carry with us all the time, and looking at Him through that loss and that heartache, we can see what's in front of us, and it's Him. And we focus on Him and Him alone. Last thing this morning. Celebrate. Worship is about celebrating who God is. You know, when all these other things are in the way, when all these other things are gone, and we've taken everything off of us, and we've shed everything that we have about us, all that's left is looking at Him. Looking at what He's done in our life, what He's going to do in our life, and what He has already accomplished by His Son. And celebrating that. And not worrying about what's around us, what's going on. You know, it doesn't matter if, you think your neighbor's a little crazy because they got one hand up or two hands up or what it may be. Hey, that's not what it's about. It's about celebrating who Christ is. It's about celebrating what He's done. Here's what David said. Now, I read this to start with, and I'm going to read this again. Psalms 100 says, Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before Him with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is God. It is He who made us, and we are His. We are His people. We are His sheep of His pasture. Enter His gates with thanksgiving and His courts with praise. Give thanks to Him and praise His name. For the Lord is good, and His love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. It doesn't say, come in the church house with a sad face. It doesn't say, come in His courts with frowns on and all sad about what's just happened to you. It doesn't say, bring all your stuff from the weekend. No, it says, leave all that out. Come into His presence with gladness. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before Him with joyful songs. But it says this in verse 3. It says, know that the Lord is God, and He is who made us, and we are His. We are His people. If there is nothing else you can get excited about and be in a worshipful state of mind about, it's worshiping God because He has chosen you to be His people. Because He's chosen us to be His church. So that when all these other things, when we're fellowshipping and we're ministering and we're evangelizing and we're discipling people, we can be worshiping through that because He has chose us to be involved in His work. I don't know if y'all get that this morning. I don't know if y'all really understand what I'm trying to say. And I'm going to wrap this up real quick. But God has chosen you to do the work that He can accomplish on His own. But instead of doing it Himself, He says, I want you, and I want you, and I want you, and I want you, and I want you to do the work for me. Amen. God doesn't need us. He wants us. Amen. God doesn't have to have you, but He chose to have you. See, we forget that a lot of times. We think that God's just there and He's like Santa Claus and we're supposed to just go sit on His lap and thank Him for everything He does and say, God, I want this and I need this and if you can't give me this, then I'm not going to do what it is you asked me to do. We think God's just that fairy tale guy that's got the long beard and He's sitting on His throne and He's looking around at everybody and He's just supposed to be there to answer all the prayers that we have. And He's supposed to give us everything we need. And right when we need it and be at our beck and call, when we fall down flat on our face, He's supposed to be the one that picks us up because that's what God does. And we have that mindset that God's supposed to give and give and give to us. And it's not the way it works. We're supposed to give and give to Him. Because He chose us. Because He chose us to be His craftsmanship. He made us, He molded us, and He chose us so that we could go out and profess His name and tell people who He is and what He's done and worship Him along the way. And you'll realize that the more you give Him praise and the more you worship Him and the more you're in that state of mind where it's all about you and it's not about me, the more you're in that, the more you'll realize I've got everything I need. God gave me a house, He gave me a wife, He gave me kids, He's gave me a job, He's gave me air to breathe, food on the table. And the more and more you look back at your life, the more and more you look back and you see all the things that God's done for you while you were worshiping and praising Him through everything, it just makes a circle and you say, you know what, God, thank you for that stuff. Let me worship you some more, God. Let me put my focus and keep my focus on you. Because when my focus on you, all the distractions are weeded out. All the things that I would normally get distracted by and would fall off course are out of the way because my focus was on you and I'm worshiping you. We've got to learn how to worship in everything we do. And you'll realize that when you're in a worship state of mind, that when you're fellowshipping with people, that who you're going to be talking about? God. When you're ministering to people, you're going to be sharing God with people. When you're evangelizing, you're sharing God. When you're discipling people, you're going to be bringing them up the way that God wants them to be brought up. And you'll realize that through everything we do, that it's all around worship. That in every aspect of our life, as a Christian, it all evolves around worshiping God because He is at the center of everything. And out of that comes fellowship. Out of that comes ministry. Out of that comes evangelism. Out of that comes discipleship. So unless we can get in this state of mind of worship and what true worship is, then you may do those things, but you're not going to get anything back out of it. You may go and sit down with someone and have lunch, but all you're going to do is get fed. You may try to lip service someone and try to minister to them, but if you're doing it just for yourself, so that you can write them down as checked off, they come to Sunday school this Sunday, you're not getting anything out of it. And you're going to look back and say, I don't get it. God, I did all these things for you. I ministered to people. I gave to the lost. I gave to the poor. And when you stand in front of God, when you stand in front of Jesus, He's going to look at you and say, I never knew you. Because you were doing it all for yourself. And it wasn't for me. But through worship, it's all focused on Him. So this morning, my question is, how are you worshiping? And who are you worshiping? Are you worshiping the things that God has made, or are you worshiping the one that made all things? We're going to sing one more song tonight in closing. I hope that this morning that your heart has been focused on Him. That through everything we've talked about this morning, that you can realize that, even myself, that sometimes I come in here on Sunday mornings and I bring everything from the world in and can't focus on who God is. But if we just leave all that stuff behind and focus on Him, and we can open our hearts to Him, and we can worship and praise Him for who He is. For some of you, you may not have a church home. And you may be looking for a church that evolves around worship. And that's what we want to be here. Through everything we do, we want to be that church that in every aspect of our lives, we're worshiping God. Whether it's sitting at yo-yos or going out and shooting guns or just hanging out on the weekend. Whatever it is, we want it to be focused on Him. So this morning, if you'd like to make this your church home, maybe we can talk about that. Or maybe if you don't know what your focus in life is because you haven't found who Christ is in your own self yet. If you haven't made that personal relationship with Him, maybe that's where you need to start this morning. You hear all this stuff about worshiping Him and making Him the center, but you don't have a center yet because you're still a sinner. And you haven't turned to Him. Maybe we need to talk about that this morning. Or maybe you just didn't do anything earlier and you just feel like, you know what? I've still got stuff that I've been hanging on to. I've been listening to Him talk. But I still just got all this stuff in my head. I just need to lay it down at the foot of the cross. Maybe that's what you need to do this morning.
Friends, thank you for joining us today at Westside Emmanuel Baptist Church, the church that loves God and loves people. We hope you'll be able to join us this coming Sunday at 10:30 a.m. or 6 o'clock in the evening time. Wednesdays at 6 o'clock for our prayer service, and we also have youth and children's activities as well. We look forward to seeing you. Hope to meet you in person here in Bogalusa with Bogalusa on our heart. We hope to see you soon.